Thank you to John Kalunga for today's contingency. Agamemno contingency. Suggestion box. In life there are often problems that will arise, something that can hinder one's life, but they themselves lack the ability to fix it. Fortunately, there are those who will go out of their way to give others a helping hand when needed. Medaka Kurokami is just such a person. Someone who, after being elected the student council president, would put all of her strength to helping the other students in her school. If this sounds like a typical slice of life story, well, you'd better buckle up. Her story may start simple, as new members get added to her council, and she partakes in typical high school affairs. But that would all eventually escalate as she finds herself in battle with other students with abnormal abilities. Fortunately for her, Medaka is also a human with incredible strength, as well as several abilities she'd unlock in order to face an ever-increasing series of powerful opponents. Even in her younger years, she had the durability and stamina to fight someone over twice her size for 3 days and nights, the ground below them having cratered from the force they were giving out. Her body can withstand the force of iron wrecking balls, striking her repeatedly, these same weapons being more than capable of breaking through concrete with ease. Her speed incredible enough to strike a person within the gap of time it took for them to blink. This same person also had the ability to react to any oncoming attack without thinking, his body choosing the correct method of dodging all on its own. And Medaka was capable of defeating him by striking him faster than his body could react. Even her mental fortitude was well above human. You see, there was a student with an ability to command others. In essence, his own mind would overpower another's, forcing them to do as he asks. Even for a time, Medaka was affected by this power, but after being trained by a relative for a day, she'd managed to overcome this and was able to resist the other students' powers. This speaks to another ability of hers, an accelerated adaptability that can sometimes manifest itself into a visible transformation. As one would expect of a transformation, Medaka can grow stronger with every form she gains. In her case, these transformations would be dubbed the God mode. Each mode not only granting her more power, but each also allowing her more control than the last. Surprisingly, however, she does have one mode that breaks the trope of transformations. One dubbed the Forsaken God, a transformation that makes her weaker than her opponent. And yet it was this form that allowed her to defeat likely one of the most dangerous antagonists of her series. That said, however, she was lucky that he no longer had access to his main ability at the time. If he hadn't changed it before their battle, I don't think she would have stood a chance. But transformations is not the limit of her adaptability. You see, not only can she adapt to her opponent's abilities, but given enough time she can also mimic them as well. This means that with every enemy she battles, with every hard-earned victory, she becomes that much stronger. And currently I am unsure of what the limits of this copying ability is. I could spend all day listing the abilities she'd obtained over her time, but that would take up too much time. And if I'm being honest, some of these seem very inappropriate for a girl her age. Instead, I'll stick to some of her most outstanding feats. The first being an ability to revive herself after death. You see, towards the end of her journey, she'd be faced with an opponent by the name of Ihiko Shishime, a warrior that had existed for over 5,000 years. Not only did his strength far surpass opponents of the past, but he was even more powerful than Medaka herself. And to make matters worse, he had an ability that can turn any battle with him 100% lethal. The ability to prevent any wound he'd inflicted from healing. With all this at his disposal, Medaka would lose her life in their final battle. We'd even see her soul on the other side for a moment, only for her to reject death and stand back up. Using a technique she'd learned, she'd vibrate her muscles and heart to force herself back to her feet. Soon after, she'd unlock her final trump card, the End God mode. In this form, she'd grown powerful enough to defeat Ihiko in one punch. Man, I don't know if there's anything this girl can't do. And if that wasn't impressive enough, despite all the injuries she'd sustained, despite probably still being in a near-death state, Medaka would still be capable of destroying the moon without a trace. To tell you the truth, there was a moment where I believed that none of these events truly happened, all of it being imagined up by a group of teens trying to enjoy their childhood while they could. My reason behind this being that every student with abnormal abilities seemed to lose them when they entered adulthood. But the fact that the moon had been revealed to still be gone 10 years later made it impossible to ignore. Truth be told, countering her is very difficult. The one thing I could have exploited would have been her naivety. During the beginning of her story, she'd actually injected herself with poisons just because she refused to believe someone would lie to her. However, she'd quickly overcome a flaw like that, and fighting her directly is absolutely out of the question. I don't need to know what would happen if any members of the League crossed her as well. This leaves me with little choice but to use underhanded tactics. I already know that she isn't immune to chemical weaponry. Perhaps infecting her with a virus could be enough to incapacitate her. Harsh, I know, but I just need her to be weakened enough to subdue. And my other option would be to inflict a different kind of wound. Not a physical one, but an emotional one. You see, the only time where I could truly say that Medaka was helpless was when she lost the re-election for Student Council President. A loss so powerful it broke her resolve. It was not a pretty sight. I've made a contingency like this before for Hal Jordan, essentially, if I can put Medaka into a simulated conflict. One that would end with her total loss. It could also result in the same effect. I won't lie, both these contingencies aren't foolproof, but as of right now, it's all we have. If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.